Welcome to Beyond Rent, the property management podcast brought to you by Rent Manager. Each episode, we talk with industry experts about market trends and practical strategies for property management professionals. Now, let's get to the conversation and go Beyond Rent.
Everyone, and welcome to Beyond Rent. Today I'm joined by Steve Hart of PMI. PMI is one of the nation's leading property management franchises, helping business owners build scalable businesses across residential, commercial, and association management. And today we're going to really discuss what it looks like to be in the franchise model in our industry. So Steve, welcome to Beyond Rent.
Hey, Joe, thanks for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for taking some time to join us and have this conversation. Franchises exist over all types of different industries, and they exist in our industry. And I don't know if everyone has a full picture of what it looks like to be involved in a franchise model. So I'm really excited about this one. So Steve, go ahead and take a moment and introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah, I'm the CEO at PMI and been at it for about 18 years. I'm also the co-founder. So myself and business partner started this thing about 18 years ago, and we have grown it considerably over the last several years to the point where we love to say we're the biggest and the best at what we do, but we still have such a long way to go. And excited to be on your show to be able to share a little bit about franchising in property management and why we ventured in that direction. You know, my background and really my passion is helping property managers grow sustainable businesses. And when we started this thing years ago, there just wasn't that kind of offering. You know, property management was one of those industries that you kind of just had to figure out on your own. Limited licensing at the time, little to no training and resources, no franchising back in the day, which is crazy because, you know, you look at similar sectors like real estate and you can buy, there's hundreds of property management franchises real estate franchises that you can plug into, but then there wasn't a property management one. And selling real estate's pretty simple. You know, you list and sell properties, whereas property management can be so much work. There's so many different components, as you know, that can make or break a property manager. But there was no one really providing that business in a box, you know, a franchise opportunity. So my partner and I decided to take that leap and do it. And we've been able to focus on helping operators really just manage doors and grow scalable businesses by creating really cool systems, training, support, a brand behind it all the marketing that goes behind it. All those things are things that we provide as a franchisor.
Yeah, I'm really excited to learn more. I'm very aware of kind of the franchise model in our space, and but I think hearing firsthand the value and the story behind why it exists is going to be exciting, because you're absolutely right. So many people that I talk to find themselves in our space as a property manager, as a property management company, and it isn't always on purpose, right? Some people fall into this industry. They have to figure it out as they go. We're involved with a lot of different associations that I know you are as well. And a lot of those associations tell us all the time that there are so many people in this industry that don't have the support system they need. And that's why associations are so important. That's also, I think, why the franchise model is so important. So maybe let's start the conversation by really talking about maybe who PMI is in the space at this point, because you're more than just like the creator of maybe the franchise model, but you're a national brand at this point, right? And what does that mean for somebody to partner with someone like PMI that is that falls into this national brand mentality?
Yeah, great question, Joe, because you're right. Most property managers that I've known and talked to over the years, they didn't typically choose property management. It's almost like they were asked to do it by some investors that they were working with, or someone said, hey, you know, maybe you should consider property management, and they dove into it that way. But yeah, most people seem like they stumble into our industry. But that's changing. Property management is such a stable and huge, it's a multi-trillion dollar industry. And it involves recurring revenue. It's got the elements to it that most entrepreneurs really want. But then you pick up the other side of the property management stick, which is you're dealing with owners, tenants, problems. And a lot of people just don't want to do that. And they hear that, oh, the profit margins are tight and it's so competitive. And, do you really want to do property management? Well, we as a franchise, we looked at all that and thought, how can we make this scalable? How can we help these property managers not have to recreate the wheel? How can we help them through this journey of going from a startup? Because most of them start at square one, where they're going out and getting their very first property to manage, all the way to a scaled, successful strategic business. And that's what we try to specialize in our franchise, is just really providing all the tools to help them get there.
Yeah, and those tools really are important. And you've mentioned the scalability, scaling, growing from a few doors up to, I'm assuming hundreds, if not thousands of doors under management for one of the companies within your network. What are some of the trajectory trends that you see when somebody's falling underneath this franchise model? Meaning, are they really growing faster than they would if they were on their own?
Yeah, when people ask, what a franchise really provides, they usually think, oh, I'm going to get a brand. I'm going to maybe get some marketing tools and things like that. And those are important. Those really matter, but that's not where the real value of a franchise comes into place. And that the real value is having these proven set of systems that I've been talking about, ongoing training, operational support, and a playbook that's already been tried and tested. So it just literally shortens the learning curve dramatically for these business owners to be able to plug in and help them avoid those, really costly errors. Most people learn by trial and error in our industry, and that's not a smart way to do property management, because you make a mistake with an owner, and especially if it's an investor with multiple properties, you're not going to get another shot. And so it's really important to do it right the first time. And Joe, I'm sorry, I failed to answer the second part of your question. Remind me what that was.
Well, the trajectory, their growth, right? So they have these systems, or you have these systems that they can tap into, support, things like that. How does it change their growth trajectory?
Yeah, it just helps them scale faster. These business owners, they've got to put these systems together eventually. When they start out and they're small, it's just all pretty much marketing and sales, and they're doing what it takes to take care of that owner and that tenant. But as your business starts to grow, especially that 100 to 200 door range, then you've got to rely on the systems. No longer can your business just be run as a one-man show. You might be that hero that does everything, but if you don't have the systems that you could pass off and train your team on and have them be able to lock in and do it just as good as you did, or better, preferably, if you don't have those systems, you're not going to be able to scale. And that's where the majority of property managers in the United States find themselves being stuck. We call it being stuck in transition, because they're trying to transition from that smaller business to a high performing property manager. And that's where the money's made. The money's made when you're able to scale, to the 500,000 door or larger mark. And so what we push and encourage our franchise partners with is elevating their game, really performing to that higher level so they can make the margins, they can make the money and the return that they want from their business. No one wants to do business and not make any money and just find themselves grinding it out every day. And unfortunately, most of the property managers in the United States fall into that bucket where they're just grinders.
Yeah, I would completely agree. A lot of the people I get to meet that are in that sub 200, sub 100 door range are putting in a lot of hours. They're doing almost all of it themselves, and they are desperate for some guidance. They're desperate for tools. And they'll say a lot of things that make sense. They'll say, well, I'm looking to automate more so I can grow, or I need some more tools or technology. And while all those things I think are true, that they probably could benefit for those, a lot of it actually comes down to the fact that they haven't really built out the systems and the processes that allow them to get out of that grind and really start growing their business faster. And it sounds like your system, your setup allows them to do that really from day one. They can start taking advantage of those systems rather than having to work backwards.
Yeah, it's too bad because, we're talking about strong, good entrepreneurs that are running good businesses. They're just caught up in the day-to-day of running the business, and they can't really build. They can't become builders because they're putting together the systems. And so that's where they find themselves getting stuck.
Yeah, and that's great that there's programs like this, and help us understand maybe some of the other advantages that people see and experience, especially when they first maybe start with PMI, because a lot of people, I would say, they're like, well, we don't really need this franchise model because I'm too small. It's too early stage for me. I don't need to be involved when I have a few investors, a few doors. But are there some advantages right out of the gate that people take advantage of when they are smaller?
Absolutely. Being part of a national brand, these business entrepreneurs, they're plugging into a brand that, we're in 47 of the 50 states, almost every major city in the United States. We've got over 450 franchisees that are all independently owned, operating in that town or city. So they plug into a network. I like to call it a community of property management professionals, and everyone's got their sights on becoming premier. We use the word premier because our vision as a brand is to become the world's premier property management brand. So when we put the new franchisees through training, it's all about elevating their service, everything they provide at a premier level. So you've got all these franchise partners all elevating the service, the level of what they're providing, all under the same brand. And so a new franchisee can plug into that network, that community of everyone working to improve their own business, but also help other people out. It's a lot different than the community you see when you go to like NARPM. NARPM's cool. We support NARPM. It's a great organization, and you go there, but everyone's operating under their own brand. They help each other to some degree. They're sharing secrets, but they're all using different softwares, different technologies, different systems. And so as an operator, especially if you're new and small and you go to these events, you get all these great ideas of what you could do to elevate your business. But man, putting it into practice sometimes is really hard from a new operator's perspective. And it's so nice to not just have the franchisor saying, hey, here's our processes, here's our playbook, but then you have this community of successful property managers saying, well, this is how I do it here, and here's what really works for me. And do you want me to come help you out and show you how I did it when I was brand new? So the biggest thing for new franchise operators is just having that ability to not be feeling like you're alone and trying to figure things out because of the playbook and the systems that they plug into. The other big thing that really is big for our brand, this makes us different than a lot of other property management franchisors out there, is our franchise provides our partners the ability to practice in any of what we call 5 pillars of property management. So most franchisees start in residential property management. That's your single family, duplex, fourplex, stuff like that. But they quickly want to expand as their business grows, and they can expand into HOA management in our franchise, short-term rental property management, commercial property management, multifamily property management. And these are all different sectors. They use different marketing. They have different training that we require them to come in and train for. but it's that scalability that these franchise partners love, that they have that ability when they're ready to dip and exercise into these different facets of management that they love.
Yeah, that's great. There's so much to unpack there because we have some good experience with NARPM. And I agree. Great association, really good network of people. And it all depends on kind of where you're at in your business, how NARPM can help you. But I'd say specifically, you're looking to grow and scale. NARPM can be very intimidating, very overwhelming because everyone there kind of already has, or a lot of people there already have their secret sauce worked out, right? They are kind of already have their systems in place, which may or may not work for you based on what your goals are and how you want to grow and all of those different things. So it can be very easy to get, again, overwhelmed, trying to figure out how all those pieces fit together, take the right advice from the right people at the right time versus a proven system, right? That PMI or similar franchise would offer, because you don't have to ask a million questions. It's kind of already built out for you, right? You're not going through that discovery phase.
There's some entrepreneurs that get into property management and they love that part of the business. They love to go plug into NARPM and look at all the different softwares that they want to use, and then look at the different CRMs and look at the different marketing tools and platforms and piece it all together. But, do you want to spend your time, doing that, or do you want to just plug into something that already exists? Maybe it's a personality type, maybe it's a bandwidth type that chooses to buy into a franchise or go it alone. I see this kind of thing happen in my life all the time. Like over the last year, I've been learning how to use AI, and I choose to use Chat GPT. And right when I feel like I'm figuring it out, someone in my office says, "Well, you should be using Claude for that." And I'm like, "Well, what's Claude?" And they're like, "Well, use that for doing this." And I don't have the time and the ability to always stay on top of all this AI and all these different tech components. It's nice to be part of a company that says, "Here, use this. This is what you use for this." And that's kind of how I would compare a franchise to just going it alone. Some people like picking out all the details. Others like to be shown the way and saying, here's what works for us and our community. Plug in and jump on for the ride. We focus on growth and building sustainable, successful businesses.
Yeah, that's a great comparison. And obviously people love talking about AI, but there are a lot of choices when it comes to AI out there. A new one every day that you get told does this or does that. Before you know it, you're using 12 different AI tools to accomplish anything that you want to have. And that can be a little, for some people that's fun and exciting. Other people, that wears them out, right? To your point of, if you just really want to grow your business, then don't worry about the discovery phase. Your team has already mastered that piece. And I want to dive into kind of the different market sectors that you had brought up. In our experience with our software, we have a lot of customers that have what we call mixed portfolios, right? Because whether you are the owner, the investor, or the property management company, a lot of times those people have the mindset that they are willing to go wherever the market takes them, wherever the opportunity takes them. So they want to kind of work in a lot of different spaces. And so it's exciting to hear that PMI kind of has that same focus, that it isn't just all residential, because there's so much more out there. When you look at the companies that are within your network, how many are branching out beyond kind of residential? You had mentioned the HOA or commercial short term. Is this kind of a new venture for a lot of them, or do you see a pretty high percentage getting involved?
We have what we call conversion franchise partners that are already existing property managers that just want to be able to, stop doing it on their own and join a national brand like PMI. And one of the biggest reasons for co-branding with us is they want to expand their sectors. They've been in residential property management. They want to maybe do HOA, but they just want to recreate it, right? And so we get a lot of new franchise partners joining because they want that expansion. And to answer your question, you said how many franchisees are operating in these other pillars. We call them pillars, the 5 pillars of property management. But out of our 450 franchise partners, we have franchisees operating in 900 of them are operating in more than one pillar. So in other words, if 450 are residential, we got another 450 doing commercial or HOA or short term. So most of them have at least, 2 sectors that they're participating in.
Yeah, that's great. And
it's a big part.
It is a big part. And I'm glad you broke that out, because I think that is important. And it really shows where the market is going and how things are changing. And
it used to not be like that. 20 years ago, if you were a property manager, if you were a commercial property manager, that's all you did. In fact, residential property manager would never do HOA and residential, because HOA is for HOA guys. And that is completely changed over the last 10, 15 years, where you see property managers getting those kind of inquiries. The listeners on this call today, I guarantee you, they're getting asked, hey, can you manage HOAs? Hey, can you manage short-term rentals? And they're turning those leads away to maybe their competitor down the street. And after turning away business so much, sometimes at least our franchise partners say, hey, it's time for me to expand. I'm at the point now with that residential part of my business where it's self-sustaining. I've got all the systems. I'm comfortable. It's growing. I'm ready to add another component to my business, add additional revenue, add additional customers and investors.
And you had made a comment that this has changed over the years. I think you maybe had commented 10 years, maybe longer, of that shifting. Is the shift simply based on demand, that just the leads are coming in and people want to, shift and expand, or is there other things driving it?
Hey, 15 years ago, I didn't even know what a VRBO or an Airbnb was. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
But it was funny. We opened our short-term rental pillar because we had a franchise operator in Maui, and we were pushing him to do residential management. He came to us, this is about 15 years ago, and he said, Steve, there's this new thing called Airbnb out here, and I want to be able to do it. And I said, we don't offer that type of training and support. And he said, well, let me figure it out on my own. And I said, okay, well, keep us posted on how it goes. And Joe, we watched this franchise partner become one of the top producers in our franchise system. And so to the point where we hired a short-term rental team and we created all the training and the systems for that. We rolled out that short-term rental pillar. Same thing with HOA. Our country is the way communities are being developed nowadays. The local governments are in some areas requiring HOAs to be created even before the community's built. And so there's this massive demand, more than we've seen in the past, and massive growth rate in HOA communities, therefore needing more HOA management. So to answer your question, we just respond to the demand. These opportunities are prevalent, and we need better property management in these different sectors.
Yeah, I would agree. And this idea of better property management as well. And if you can manage one of these pillars, one of these sectors, there's a good chance you're going to be really good at another if you can learn the nuance, the things that really make it successful and can make it tick. And obviously Airbnb, short-term rental is very different than long-term residential, very different than commercial, but a lot of the skills are transferable.
They're not even the same. We call them pillars because they are very uniquely different. And as I mentioned earlier, we require our franchise partners to come back and do the training. They use different technology, different software, different marketing, different accounting. And so even though it's still property management, it's very different. And anyone that chooses to venture into these different sectors needs to prepare for that and really build out different systems for those different sectors.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Now, talking about growth, I'm noticing it, and maybe you can confirm this, but I feel like the franchise model is growing in popularity, that more people enjoy working with a franchise model now versus being independent. A, can you confirm that? And B, Why is that? Like, why is it now that we're starting to see kind of the growth in this franchise model?
Yeah, I don't know the answer as to why now. We love it. We're growing faster. Our franchise partners are their businesses are growing faster than they used to. Maybe that's because we're getting better and our systems are just a lot better than where they were years and years ago. But our franchisees perform better than the national average. And I'm talking about growth percentages in the industry. And so I think people that are doing this, creating their own wheel, they're watching, some of these brands come up, these national brands, and they're thinking, well, why am I doing it on my own? And what are the advantages that a franchise could offer? One of the big things that a lot of people join our brand for is our acquisitions. We have an entire acquisition team that helps our franchise partners buy their competitors down the street and acquire these small to large businesses. And we've got a professional team that helps them value those businesses, help them contract them so they make sure they aren't buying something that's overpriced or gets them in trouble. And so a lot of our franchise partners grow their business through acquisitions. And that's something I don't think a lot of property managers have the confidence in venturing out into doing things like that. And so it's part of our business. We don't charge for it. It's just part of our offering and what we offer.
Yeah, that's a nice value add there, obviously, because you want to see these franchisees grow. You want to kind of grow your overall business. But a lot of business owners will hesitate in those moments because they don't have that same skill set, right? If they're a great operator, that's great. To understand how to acquire and how to merge that business into yours, that's a whole different skill set. And at the size of most of these businesses, they don't have people dedicated to it, right? So it really takes some additional hand-holding to help get them there. And I really think that's a big part of what we're seeing in the franchise model is that people want to own their own business. They want to grow it, but they also are smart enough and they look around and they compare notes and they know they shouldn't do it alone, right?
Yeah.
So why do it alone when you don't have to, right? That you can participate in this community that you referenced earlier.
Joe, you just said something that's really important. I want to emphasize it. Property managers, no matter where you're at in the country right now, they're getting hammered by these groups that are trying to buy their business, right? I get at least one or two emails a week to my inbox. So I can't imagine if I were an actual property manager, what would be happening. So they're getting peppered by, hey, should I sell my business? What's my business worth? And they're not at a point where they're ready to let go. And with a franchise, you're not, this isn't my company. These franchise partners that we have, we call them partners on purpose because this is their business. They own the business. Each of those businesses is independently owned and operated. They're leasing our logo and licensing that branding and the marketing, and they're plugging into the platforms and things that we train them on. But it's their business. They get all the upside. And when it's time for them to sell, we've got a network of 450 people that want to buy their business, and that it's an easy exit or rollover. They can transfer their business to anyone they want, a son, daughter, family member, sell it entirely. So there's just a lot of options that are available for these guys that still own their business. They're not selling it and still working for that guy, and he's making all the upside. This way they get all the upside, but still get to be part of something bigger than themselves and a massive community.
Yeah, I'm sure when someone looks to exit, a franchise like this is really, really valuable to other people within that network, right? Because they understand what they're buying. They understand the operational side of what they're buying.
They're buying the book of business because the system's already the same.
That's right.
In fact, we have a list of franchise partners that say, hey, if anything comes available, let me know. I want to buy it. And so we have no problem helping our franchise partners exit when they're ready or, sell a part of their business, things like that.
Yeah, and that really speaks to something that I see a lot in the residential property management space is fragmentation. And we've kind of hinted at it along the way as far as people looking for different systems at work or the lack of maybe even some professionalism that lacks in our industry with people, how they operate. Really the franchise model, and I would even point to some of the associations are really trying to solve for that, right? Where we operate under similar mindsets, similar processes. We agree on what good looks like. And I think the franchise model really is helping elevate professionalism in our industry for that very reason, right? Because a lot of the fragmentation just leads to different experiences at the resident level or the owner investor level, right? When you go from one PMC to the next.
That's exactly it. We find ourselves helping a lot of startup level property managers, and it's a heavy lift for us and very little to no money. And we do this because we have this belief and hope that we're going to help them be able to scale to those larger size operators. And it's a lot of work. We feel like we're doing our share to elevate the industry. Like I mentioned earlier, our vision is to create premier level property management. And so by having all our systems, processes, and training focused on that, we feel like we're elevating the name of property management and helping just provide more good property management throughout the United States.
Yeah, and
said that weird. That sounded really bad.
No. I thought
more good,
more good. No, we can clean some of this up for sure. No, but I thought it was fine. And it really makes me think of some of I would say the political or cultural climate that we've been in. And I don't want to go too far down this path, but property managers aren't always painted in the best light, right? Whereas rents have gone up, it puts additional pressure on these small business owners. And I think being part of a network is really important because if we elevate, and you've used the word premier a lot, and I love that idea of creating premier property management companies, because if the renter has a really good experience renting anything, an apartment, a home, it doesn't matter what it looks like, they're going to have a better review, a better testimony when it comes to their experience and sharing with others, which I think our industry really needs right now. So I think there's a lot of upside to this long term.
I agree 100%.
And so I wonder, when you look at the word premier, if somebody is listening to this and maybe they're starting out, they're thinking about starting out, or maybe they've been running a property management company for years, how can they evaluate and say, hey, am I running a premier property management company? Or how do I know if I'm premier? What would that evaluation look like to you?
We talk about that a lot in our brand. And obviously, premier to us means you're the best. And full disclosure, not all of our franchise partners are the best in their communities, and we're working. We're a work in progress to elevate everyone to that point. When we get to that level, that's when we really make it as a brand, and that's when we feel like we're really helping these business partners really get the best ROI that they can for their investment. That's really what we're trying to do. We're just helping people build business at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I love that idea that not all of your franchisees are premier yet. It'd be one thing to say, hey, as soon as you're in the network, you're considered premier. That's not how life works, right? They have to earn it just like everyone else does. It's not just something that they're buying. They have to earn that premier level. So I appreciate the fact that you positioned it that way and phrased it that way, because everyone's on a journey towards that higher level. And I think we are as a industry as well. So help me understand next steps. So if somebody's listening to this and they're like, all right, Steve, this sounds pretty good. I think I might be interested. This franchise model, something maybe I haven't looked into in the past, or maybe I did and I decided not to do it. What are like some of the initial questions or next steps that people tend to have as they explore working with PMI?
Yeah, my intent on this podcast wasn't to sell our business model. It's really just to come on and inform, because most property managers or investors in our industry, they really don't know and understand that there even is property management franchisors out there. And so I wanted to just educate your listeners and your audience on, who we are and what we do as franchisors in the property management space. And there's several in residential property management. There's several in short term. We're the only one that does, to my knowledge, HOA and commercial, the bigger multifamily franchising as well. But one concept that gets misunderstood is this: hey, I'm really proud of what I built. I like my brand. I don't want to give that up. And you don't have to, is the answer. A property manager that just wants to plug in to a franchise system like PMI, they can keep their same brand. We do what's called a co-brand, where if you're Premier Property Management, for example, we would probably rename you PMI Premier Property Management, where we combine the brands. We don't want to throw away any of the years that a property manager has built and worked hard to get that name recognition. So that's one of the things. Another thing is, well, I got to give away my firstborn to be part of one of these franchise systems, and it's not like that at all. In fact, if you're a conversion property manager coming into the brand, we drop our franchise fees significantly, because we'd much rather work with an existing property manager that we're just fine-tuning and refining their systems and their processes than start from scratch with a brand new startup property manager. And so it's not as much as they would think. And then the ongoing fee, which is we take a little bit of the success of our franchise partners every month. It's called a royalty. All franchises, that's where the franchise makes their money, is on this royalty. And that royalty is small enough where the upside of being part of the franchise and the discounts that our franchise partners get from all the technology that we use, like all the software, our franchise partners don't pay retail for anything, because we're the largest property management brand in the United States. The software and tech companies literally are throwing their software at us, trying to get us to use that. So we get really, really good discounts that pass along to a franchise partner. So when you look at the end of the day, the real cost to do a franchise, I would say it pretty much evens it out. And you look at all the upside with being able to plug into national brand and the partnership, it really, in my opinion, is a no-brainer for someone that really is in growth mode and wants to maybe expand to different sectors of the industry. And that's why we're growing as fast as we are, and our brand is elevating at the speed that it is.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And thanks for breaking that down, because it really speaks to the value, because we talked a lot about the value for like the new property management company, the new investor or the new entrepreneur. But if you're existing, there's still lots of upside, right? There's lots of reason to join and be a part of it and be a partner with PMI, because there's still all of those advantages. But there's also some additional ones that you just brought up there, as far as getting those deeper discounts and things like that to help level off some of the expenses. And we know, as we all know, with technology, there's more and more technology every day. So a lot of these other operators are trying to evaluate and understand which ones to use. And that's very costly, where if you're part of this network, you can really take all of those advantages alongside.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, Steve, if somebody wants to learn about PMI, what's the best way for them to reach out or follow along with what your team's doing?
Our website's probably the easiest. We're all over the web in regards to social media. But if you want information about the franchise or anything at that level, not one of our franchisees' offerings, but what we offer at the franchise level, the best place is just propertymanagementinc.com. And you can find all about all these different resources that our franchise partners have available to them.
That's true. We'll make sure we'll drop some links into the show notes so people know where to go. Obviously, propertymanagementinc.com is a pretty easy website to remember, so I'm sure people will grab that and head over there. Well, Steve, any last thoughts as we close out for today? It's been a great conversation.
Hey, Joe, I really appreciate it. It's great to be on your show, and thanks again for your time and showcasing this franchise concept for our industry. I think it's really great of you to lean in and be able to showcase that. But at the end of the day, there's no one right way to build a property management business. But the operators that succeed long term, in my opinion, are the ones that have figured out how to turn great service into repeatable systems. These guys that start out, they're usually really good at service, but where they struggle is creating that system. And I know I talked about this word system on the whole podcast, but it's really the key. If there's one tip I'd give to any of your listeners that are feeling like they're stuck and they need more growth, I'd say focus on your systems and make those really followable by your team, because that's what's going to get them that scalability.
And that's terrific. So if you're really great at service, really loving the property management industry and the business, but you haven't quite hit that scalable part, it's probably your systems. And if you need help with systems, I think Steve and your team over there at PMI can probably help them out.
We'd love to help if it's the right fit. Thanks, Joe. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Steve. And thank you to our audience for listening in to another episode. And until next time, keep going beyond rent.
Thanks for listening to Beyond Rent. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with a colleague and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss the next one. Beyond Rent is brought to you by Rent Manager Property Management Software. Learn more at rentmanager.com. Until next time, keep going beyond rent.